All right, what's going on? We are back at it again. Not a new guest alert, but it is a WVU SPOMAG reunion. Ryan, it's Minnigh, correct? I never remember. Minnigh. Okay.
Yep, like a
There's
CK
a GH
with a G.
at the end. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, you're telling me.
So what's going on? It's been about a year. You were on last year for Stanley Cup playoffs, and here you are again.
Yeah, I'm back at it. Full year of sports and new life adventures to happen, but still talking the same old sport because
So what life adventures?
I don't work for WVU anymore.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's probably about it. Do you remember whenever you were in town? Do you remember Mon Health?
I mean, I'm sure I do. Yeah,
The hospital system.
Yeah.
So I work for them now. So
okay.
I'm not a nurse. Don't ever let me touch somebody.
I mean, obviously I know your background. So
yeah. I work in their communications now. So I don't work for WVU. We moved across town, but I mean that's really it. Nothing. I say life adventures like I traveled for a year, but I really just moved across town and got a new job. So
where is Mon Health?
So I actually work in Preston County.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, so it's a nice little drive every day. But
what? So it's called Mon Health, and it's in Preston County. For those obviously not very many people know, but Monongalia County is where Morgantown is, and Preston County is the next county over, and that's kind of a haul out there.
Yeah, it's about 45 minutes to the hospital from Morgantown.
That's just odd that it's called Mon Health and it's out in Preston County.
Yeah, I mean we could talk about the sister, like they started as one and then bought and branched, all of that fun stuff. But does anyone in Texas really care about a hospital system?
I mean, people listen all over. My friends back home in Alabama probably are my biggest listeners.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, I have the same deal. I tell people all the time, like I work in web communications, or no. Is it? Yeah, web communications. I know where I work, but I always forget how I explain it to people. They always think I'm IT for whatever reason.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, no. I am not IT. I am not that smart.
No. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I can do words, but don't ask me to code words. That's not how it works.
Well, we have the draft going on. We just went into a little bit. I do want to touch up on this, though. Your Pittsburgh Steelers potentially have their next guy. Obviously, you're a Pittsburgh everything fan.
I say that unfortunately with baseball, but yeah.
Well, the Reds suck right now.
But hey, tickets are cheap. That's one thing that nobody will ever talk about that when your team's bad.
Yeah.
The Pirates. Side note: the Pirates ran a promotion for opening day that was like, we have tickets for $4.12 for 412. I'm like that's not because it's for 412. It's because you can't sell. People get people in the door. We know how this works.
Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the area code in Western PA.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yep. 4 tickets for 412 on April 12th for opening day and 412. And I was like, that's cool.
Oh, that was so they must have been on the road to start the year. I was about to say that was a week later, but
I was going to say they never get a home game because they never sell it out. So we have the second lowest attendance in baseball right now. But
that's a shame. I've been to PNC Park a few times. That is one of the nicest ballparks. It's not all that big, but for sure one of the best backdrops I've ever seen to a ballpark. And it's just really nice in general when you're in it.
Oh, absolutely. But on happier notes, the Steelers that actually, seem to have a franchise going, as you mentioned, I'm intrigued by the pick. I'll be honest. I really thought, I actually told my friend that I watched the draft with, I told him, I said, I've just convinced myself that we're going to take Malik Willis.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Genuinely thought that. I didn't really have a second opinion. Kenny Pickett was like number 2 in my mind, being like, if he's taken, we'll take Kenny Pickett. But when we got to 20, I said, I mean, it's going to be Malik Willis. And then when they picked Pickett, I was actually a little surprised. I don't have anything against Kenny Pickett. I do think.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Wow. Natural. I'm surprised nobody else has brought that up to me yet, being like, oh, you're not a true Pittsburgh fan if you don't love Kenny Pickett and Pitt. I'm like, I don't.
There's a lot of WVU fans who disagree. And honestly, I've lived a little bit in Washington, Pennsylvania. There's way more WVU fans there than there are Pitt fans, and there's more obviously Penn State fans too than there are Pitt fans.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Penn State is definitely the king of Pennsylvania. I mean, everybody kind of knows that, but yeah, I was intrigued by it because I think.
Ooh, I like this Packers pick. Sorry, it just came in.
Who do we have?
Kingsley Enagbare, edge rusher from South Carolina. He was like kind of near the top of the board for a while and fell all the way to the back end of round 5. So I'm excited about that one.
Well, this is a deep edge rusher class.
Yeah.
Which is pretty, I mean, you everybody who watched the first round, at least, you know that this is not a quarterback skill position draft other than receiver.
Yeah.
So
and even then, I think this receiver draft is pretty overrated. A lot of speed. I don't deny that at all, but there's not a lot of, I don't think, world beaters, dominant players. You know, there were a few guys at the top end of the draft, but outside of those 5, maybe, I'm not even sure all 5 are going to be difference makers in the NFL. I thought it was a whole lot of, we'll see.
Right. Well, and I always say too, I always joke, but you know, it all starts up front. So if your offensive line sucks, your quarterback, running back, and receivers aren't going to be as good. So if you're getting drafted to a team that's not really stable in those positions as a receiver, the trickle effect's real. Just so you know.
You know, I have actually come around to, you know, it's becoming more and more of a weapons league. And we have actually had the same opinion that it starts up front. You know, I'm all about building from the ball out first. But we just saw with Cincinnati, a team that was not great in the trenches, get to a Super Bowl with playmakers, you know, on the perimeter. Yeah. That's what it's becoming. And I admit that. However, my opinion still remains the same. You don't need to draft those guys in the first. There is a proven track record that the value is probably better in the second and third round for those guys.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it's funny because I think of when the Steelers made Super Bowl 43, which seems ancient for those of you who have not been around as long as we have. It was actually very similar because I remember watching. I mean, how many times did Joe Burrow get sacked in the Titans game in the playoffs?
Oh, like 9 times or something.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous number, and you're like, this team could never win, and they were on the brink of winning a Super Bowl. I mean, they were 2 minutes away from winning a Super Bowl. Yep. So I mean, that's what you're right. That's what it has become. But that Steelers team, same deal. weren't a great rushing team. The offensive line, you know, we have Darnell Stapleton and Orpheus Roy as some of our anchors on the line. It not have to be from the line, but I prefer it that way, I guess. But it is becoming that. And I think some of it is the clamor, but you know, if you just throw a quick release, do you really need a great offensive line if you're getting the ball out within 3 seconds? I mean, that's to each team their own, but I like to be able to run the ball and do it a little bit of both ways.
Yeah, well, we're old school.
Yeah, well,
the league is changing. You know, it's all about passing nowadays. I'm curious, did you go to WVU spring game?
I didn't.
You did not?
No, I didn't.
I was curious. I was watching it the other day, and you're one of the few people I still know in Morgantown, so I was curious.
Yeah, I'm to the point now where I know like maybe 10 people on the team because of all the transfers and everything. So I was like, you know what, I'll pay attention and I'll listen a little to know kind of what happened, but we'll see what happens during the season because I hope it's better, but
yeah, I don't
know.
I don't know. You know, there was a time not too long ago I was ready to you know, jump off a cliff just with all the transfers that we've had and, you know, transferring out and in this day of NIL. I mean, we just saw yesterday Pitt is losing one of its best offensive playmaker, which sounds like it's going to go to USC because of NIL. And, you know, he's getting a better deal at USC. And I'm like, this is straight cheating and tampering. And the NCAA really is not doing anything about it. And look, I'm not a fan of the NCAA. I will say with this whole NIL thing, I cut them a little slack. This is brand new. I don't think they had any idea what to expect. So all these things are happening with the, you know, one-time transfer and out and all this kind of stuff that I just don't think they prepared for. We probably didn't prepare for it, but now it's getting out of hand. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I think it is, but I think you're right. I think it's one of the nuances that maybe wasn't considered because I'll be honest, even I didn't see it to this full extent. Because I mean, it makes sense. Like, you're going to probably get better NIL deals in bigger markets and bigger places that can give you money. I mean, Morgantown's just not one of those
Yeah.
places. And there are many other college towns. I mean, it's not just Morgantown.
Yeah, it's not just us. It's a lot of colleges. I mean, if you're not a blue blood or in like LA, Miami,
right.
a college in a big city, you're just not going to have very many opportunities.
I mean, I've always been in the camp of college athletes can be paid. I mean, let's face it, they've probably been paid one way or another for a long time. But this is a side effect that I probably didn't really see coming either. I mean, it makes sense, but I really thought that there would be, oh, you can be the stud here, so you'll get this small business on board. But I mean, the money does talk in some regard. If you're going to get paid a lot more money to go to school to LA than in Pittsburgh or Morgantown or, I don't know, Waco in Texas, or, even the difference of Auburn and Alabama, in the SEC, I mean, is big. So, I mean, there's always going to be that now until something's done about it. But given the NCAA's track record, we're probably looking at about 60 years down the
road. I just thought of something. There was another player who is transferring out of Miami because he doesn't like his NIL deal. So I don't remember if that's basketball or football, but I'm to the point where I'm like, we got to put. I don't like restrictions. I'm a capitalist by nature. I do not believe in restrictions. Anything like that. But I do think there needs to be something. Whether you limit the opportunities for underclassmen, I don't know. I mean, there used to be a rule where freshmen couldn't play. Mm-hmm. In general. Maybe you limit them. Maybe you say you don't get this until your sophomore year, until you make an impact. And then if you transfer, you only get a certain percentage of your NIL deal. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and I don't think they'll go back to the sit 1 year out
right
thing.
No. And I don't like that rule anyway.
And right. I don't think that's, I used to hate that rule. I was like, if you're going to transfer, let them play. I don't think that, because
no, I will say transfer twice and you're not a graduate. I think there should be penalty for that.
Right. Because then it's just transferring to transfer.
Yes.
I feel like back in the day, 3 or 4 years ago, and prior to that, people were transferring because they weren't going to get playing time or because they thought they had a better opportunity somewhere else. But now with these deals, they've opened it up to where there's just so much more that can go wrong, even though there's more that's going right. There's so much more that can go wrong because, like you said, I don't like my deal. I'm going to go somewhere else. And then you go somewhere else and you're like, well, I don't like this. It has nothing to do with the team at that point. It has to do with the deal, where at least in the past, even though the rule was kind of draconian, you're like, okay, like, yeah, he's not going to get playing time as the quarterback. Yeah, it makes sense to go somewhere else. But that still happens. But I think a lot more of it has come down to the money and the opportunity to play somewhere else where you can potentially make more.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff going on. Anyway, I brought that up because I watched the spring game last week and I was in a low spot this offseason, I was just talking about with all our transferring out and getting tampered with, let's call it what it is, from University of Miami, who happens to have one of our old assistants and an alum on their coaching staff. And he's just plucking, he did it at Georgia. He was at Georgia this past year. He did it at Georgia. He's done it now at Miami twice. So he is just plucking our guys left and right. And one, that I think that's as close to cheating as it gets and should be illegal. Anyway, so I was in a low point and I watched the spring game. We had the JT Daniels news and I watched the spring game and I'm like, I was kind of encouraged. I kind of liked where the team was. That's the best I feel about a Neil Brown coach team, although that's after spring, but that's not saying a whole lot.
Well, I think we had this debate in the West Virginia realm of the thing is everyone gets mad when you lose 35 players to the transfer portal. Yeah. But when you get a guy who's a former 5-star quarterback, everyone's like, that's what it's for right there. Just to get, but
the portal give. I've seen West Virginia fans say it all the time. The portal giveth and the portal taketh away.
Yep.
So I love that saying and it rings true. And I don't have a problem with a player leaving. I have a problem with being poached.
Yeah. Well, and so I was going to say the only thing I can see with that makes sense is oftentimes these guys are recruited by coaches.
True.
So it's like they want to follow them and they want to be with them. They like them. I get that, but at the same time, like you mentioned, if you're transferring more than twice, I mean, you're really just doing it to do it. You obviously don't have a loyalty to the team. You have a loyalty to something else, whatever that may be, a coach, money, whatever. But the one thing that encourages me about WVU moving forward this year, to be honest, is that the line is actually a little bit older. That's something that I don't think people talked about enough. I know this is an offensive line podcast now, just so you know. But when
I
the
play
line gets
defensive
older,
line.
right. But when the line gets older, that helps. I mean, there's an inexperience that matters whenever you're talking about that. It's a big jump to college football. So these guys have more experience and actually have playing time. It works out. And I think with a good quarterback like JT Daniels, who I think is a few steps above what Jarrett Nagy was, I don't think we have
That's
much
not
to
even
say about that.
debatable.
What's that?
I said that's not even debatable.
No. We sat in a game last year whenever we played Texas, and we're like, Nagy for Heisman, baby. I mean,
There were moments with him last year, just I couldn't stomach watching him. And then he went on a stretch there in October where, and the rumors kind of started picking up that he would come back for another year. And I was like, if he keeps playing this way, I wouldn't have a problem with it. And then he just took a nosedive after the Iowa State game.
Yeah.
And I was like, get this guy out of here.
Well, and I mean, he's one of the names that no one in Morgantown's going to scoff at. I mean, I wish him well in Western Kentucky.
Yeah, I will say this. I thought he handled it really well. I thought the fan base was lousy to him. A pocket of the fan base, not the entire fan base.
Sure. Well, and you know as well as anybody, Shane, West Virginia fans can be brutal.
Oh yeah, we're about like Philadelphia fans and anything. We can be just brutal, but no one loves the team more than us.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hard thing to explain. That's a very hard thing to explain to recruits, is be like all these people are going to hate you, but they actually love you. They can't wait for you to get here, but they are going to cuss at you every game. You might win every game, but they're still going to be mad about something.
That's a great way to put it. They hate you, but they love you.
They are going to be mad. You are going to be booed more than the other team in your stadium. That's not 100%.
Oh, I've booed before. And I have parents who are like, you shouldn't do that. My grandfather probably, God rest his soul, would have said the same thing. But I will boo. If I do not like the product on the field, I will boo. I won't hesitate. And I have done that.
I mean, if you're down 56-0, I think it's fair.
I don't think not very many times I witnessed that. There were a few times. One was Kansas State in 2012, our first year in the Big East. It was like 55-0 at halftime. It wasn't that bad, but it was like 55-7.
I remember that game. Who was that quarterback for Kansas State? Now we're just going to throw it back. Was it Klein? His name was Klein.
I thought it was Colin Johnson or something like that. Jones. I don't know. Big dude, number 10. I remember that. And he loved to act like he was going to run and drop back and dunk it to a tight end over the middle of the field.
Yeah, the Tim Tebow offense.
Yes. And I just remember once that game started, it got out of hand fast. And if not for Tavon Austin running the kick return back right before halftime, I think it would have filtered out even more because it was 24-0, I think, by the second quarter. But
yeah, nothing like an empty mile and push drive.
That was bad. I mean, that thing was empty by the end of the game. I also remember the Oklahoma game in 2016. We were actually pretty good that year. Oklahoma comes to Morgantown. It's snowing before the game.
Mm-hmm.
We get kind of chippy, before the game with Oklahoma, kind of get, thug it up a little bit. And I was like, well, we better fucking show it. And it was 35-0 by the second quarter.
I was down on the sideline for that game, and I just remember thinking, my mind told me, I was like, all right, we're going to be chippy. This might be it. And then I looked up at the scoreboard, and Baker had already dropped 3 touchdowns. I was like, oh, interesting. That's fun.
The thing about that game, we made it a game going into the fourth quarter. Because it was 35-0, and then going into the fourth quarter, it was 41-28. And I was like, shit, we might come back and win this game. And then they controlled the game the rest of the way.
Sounds right. That's the typical Oklahoma game, except for the Fiesta Bowl, which outlier.
I love having a WVU guy on the podcast. James is a West Virginia guy, who's my usual co-host, but he's from Delaware. He's not, he went to WVU, but I wouldn't call him a lifelong fan. Although I don't correct me if I'm wrong. Are you a lifelong WVU fan? I don't remember.
Oh yeah.
Oh
So
yeah. Okay.
I will say when it comes to my allegiance of teams,
I know
I
you're like
watch.
me though. You went to WVU, I believe, undergrad and grad school though.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So my allegiance to teams lies more professional. So I would say probably the Steelers and Penguins
Yeah.
more so. But I mean WVU's always been. I've watched them for almost 20 years, maybe. I mean, we're talking back to like Avon Coburn whenever they
Oh,
were
that was the
young.
first
So
guy that I remember watching was Avon Coburn.
so I mean that's where we're at. I mean, of course, you know, you learn more history as you go, but I mean that's what I kind of remember start watching. But yeah, we've been through a lot even in 20 years of watching this team. A lot of highs, a lot of lows.
A lot of highs, a lot of lows. Yeah, so you want to go ahead and get started? I think we've talked enough about other things. We can go ahead and get to a Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, time for the NHL now.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Is the regular season over? Was that done last night, today?
I think there's one more game tomorrow.
Let's see.
I
Real
can't-
quick. I'm just
I think
making
it's
sure
the-
the seeding is figured out.
Yeah, I think the seeding's figured out. I think the game tomorrow is like the Jets and Kraken. So I'm just like, don't play it. Just neither of you just don't play it. Don't worry about it.
Saturday says no games scheduled, so I think we're good. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Tomorrow it's Seattle and Winnipeg. Neither of those teams are in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, so why are you even playing? Just
I
there
do
might be like
this. What'd you think about Seattle this year? Like, not. I know they weren't very good, but what do you think about Seattle? I didn't really watch them.
I'll be honest, and you will be able to tell in some of my assessment here. I don't watch the West as much, but some of that is just, you know, where I'm at. But
Yeah, but the Pens probably paid to play there, and you watched it. Did you get a frozen pizza?
oh yeah, well, I mean, come on, are you kidding me? I listen before Steelers games. I listen to the same 4 songs every time.
For
Every
those,
time.
obviously,
If I
no
don't
one's going to
listen to
know
them in
that.
that order, it's going to be bad.
There are a handful of people in the universe who know that reference. It's probably me, you, Jared McLeaver, who was in our grad school classes, maybe a few others, and God, like, who understand that joke. But I remember, before one of our classes, you sitting down and saying, Penguins play tonight, and I got a frozen pizza. I'm excited.
Honestly, put that on my gravestone. That's how I want to. That's how I want to be remembered in life. Is, you know, someone Pittsburgh was playing, and I just had a good time watching them.
Anyway, I was always a fan of Seattle. You know, the expansion to Seattle for the NHL. It struck me as a hockey town. I know it's a good sports town, and it was just one of those deals. If I didn't know anything about hockey really, but I could tell you probably most of the teams, I would have assumed Seattle already had a team.
I think that's fair. And I think, you know, with any new team, I don't want to say gimmicks, but I mean, you have to get people in the door. So, I mean, when you bring a team to a new town, naturally it's going to create excitement. They didn't have the same year Vegas did, obviously, in their first year. But at the same token, I think I don't want to say as far as like a team that they're like building up to this big mecca that, you know, they're not there yet. They're one of the worst in the league, but you can definitely tell that the support's there. And really that's what matters more than anything is that people are going to support them and get behind them. And it looks like a nice arena. It looks like a good time. So, I mean, that's, you know, that matters too. So as long as the fans support them and stay behind them, I'm good with it. Now we just got to figure out where it's going because it feels like it's never going to end.
I will say this, the new arena, I'm hoping more importantly, this brings back the Seattle Supersonics who were robbed back in 2008. So I felt that for a long time, and I hope the NBA does the right thing. Another expansion idea, though, has been tossed around lately was baseball. Nashville is going to bid for a team, and same deal. I was like, if I didn't know baseball a whole lot, but I had to guess the teams, I probably would have already guessed Nashville had a team. They strike me as a huge baseball town.
Yeah, I would agree. Even if I wouldn't say like huge baseball town, the way that Nashville has been on the rise, just of cities in the U.S. I mean, everyone's like, you got to get to Nashville. Nashville's so cool. Nashville's such a scene. I've never been personally, but everyone that I know that's been is like, it's fantastic. I know
I lived in Nashville
Right.
for a little over a year. I love Nashville. I really enjoy Texas right now. But I've said, if I move out of Texas, like Nashville's near the top of my list.
Right.
It's really one of the few places I would move to.
Well, and I think that creates a good environment because the Predators have a great environment.
I was
with
just
what
about
they
to
do.
say they sell out for the Predators. If people think Nashville is a football town, it's not. It's a hockey town.
Yeah.
And if you can support a hockey team in the deep South, you're going to support baseball. You're going to support football. You're going to support basketball.
My theory is if they bring, it's kind of like the Kraken, right? If you have the arena, you have the quote unquote gimmicks that get people in the door, people are going to support it and they're going to have fun doing it. I think you could put pretty much anybody in Nashville right now and people would be like, we're in, we're back, we're going to back them up because they just love their city, and that's fine.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start in the East. We'll go alphabetical order. So my Atlantic division, let me pull it up here on my phone. Stanley Cup Finals, where I believe Florida is the number one overall seed in the East and number one seed in the Atlantic. So they play Washington. What do you think about that?
So the President's Trophy winners don't really have a great record right now.
Yeah.
as far as kind of getting down the line. And look, this is an intriguing matchup because it's the Capitals. Yeah. I actually said this is one of like the big three to watch in the first round because I really think that Washington, even with an injury to Ovechkin, they're just a scrappy team. Now, I may think that because I see them more often as a Penguins fan, and they always give us some trouble, but it's the Capitals. They've been there. They've done that. Now, Florida is probably the best team in hockey right now, and of course, they've been firing on all cylinders.
They have, yeah.
Huberdeau and Barkov. It looks good, right? The one question mark to me, though, as good as he has been, is still Sergei Bobrovsky, their goaltender, because I've seen him.
And I will say he does not have a great track record in the playoffs.
No, I've seen him in the playoffs, and as good as a goaltender as he is, it's one of those things that until you get over that hump, everyone's going to have that question. So I think Florida has the upper hand in this series. I think they're the better team. I just think that everything points their direction, but they actually have to do it, because until then, people are still going to look at him and say, well, Bob can't do it. And that's not a title you want to wear.
And I don't like that. I agree with you 100%. And I don't like the whole, they're not good in the postseason ever kind of, the way we label players. We've done it with Aaron Rodgers. We've done it with Clayton Kershaw for the longest time. And I don't think Sergei Bobrovsky is anywhere near those two, like in terms of how much criticism he receives. But it is said come Stanley Cup playoffs, whenever he's in it, is, well, he as always, he's struggling or whatever. I think this could be a very intriguing matchup. Washington has, the offense to score and get behind the net. If Bobrovsky doesn't show up, it could be trouble.
Right. Well, and the other X factor that I put in this game, as much as I hate to do it, given my actual allegiance, is Tom Wilson. Because look, I mean, everyone I can't. I
have family members who are big Pittsburgh Penguins fans, and they loathe Tom Wilson.
Well, I'm not your family, but I also loathe Tom Wilson. So, let's just clear that up right now. But let me tell you, the guy, he's an intimidator on the ice. I mean, whatever you want to say about it, I mean, yeah, he might be dirty, he might have suspensions, but at the same time, you have to keep your head up. You have to know where he is. He's a guy that can change the course of this series just by hitting people. He doesn't even have to score goals, which he's oddly good at as well. But he's one of those guys that could be an X factor. As crazy as it sounds, he comes out flying and hits a few people. They kind of rally behind it. I'm still going to pick the Panthers personally, but I mean, watch out for the Capitals. This is not an easy out in the first round by any means.
Yeah, I think you've talked me into this. I really hadn't followed the bracket that closely, but looking at the matchups and what we just discussed here, it's all kind of flooding back. And yeah, I think this could go 6 or 7 games depending on how Bobrovsky plays. But I agree. I'm still going to go with the Panthers. I will say this, though. I'm a big goal differential guy.
Mm-hmm.
And let me pull it up. Last I checked, the Panthers were doing very well. They're plus 94 in goal differential. which is outstanding. Let me pull up the Tampa Bay Lightning from a few years ago that were, I know that they got bounced early, but they won the President's Trophy. I think broke the record for points in a season. I'm trying to think of their goal differential. It was something up there too. It was like plus 98, plus 100. So you're like, that's kind of who they're on par with right now.
Right.
I worry with them also with that, because that's clearly what happened to Tampa that year. Were they on coast mode because they had the playoffs wrapped up?
Yeah. I mean, that's something that we say every playoffs for the team that clinches first. You're like, well, I mean, do they care? Are they getting in there? I think the Panthers probably, I think once you get bounced and you realize, hey, we got to take this serious. I mean, these guys are professional athletes. They're not, sitting there just saying we're just going to take everything off and not care. But, when, like you said, when you see Columbus, a team who, squeaks into the playoffs, sweep a team like the Lightning, that's concerning. But the Capitals are not that Blue Jackets team. They're better.
No, I was just about to say.
So that's even crazier.
That Columbus team, I think, was fighting, correct me if I'm wrong, was fighting to get into a playoff spot the last couple of weeks. And they had that mentality, whereas Tampa was coasting. This is different. Washington and even Boston, the two wild cards in the East, have
that's crazy.
They've had this wrapped up for a few weeks now. The playoff seeding has been set in the East. So they're also kind of, I would argue, in coast mode too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it comes down to, I think it's just going to come down to some of those, if Florida scores like they score, probably not going to be too much of a concern. This isn't the Capitals team that won the Cup a few seasons back. A lot of guys have departed. I mean, sure, you still have Ovechkin. I know he's coming off an injury into the playoffs, but again, there's reason to believe that the Capitals can win this series. And that's why hockey, I think, is the greatest of all the sport, because we're sitting here talking about essentially a 1-8 matchup. And we're like, you never know. It might happen.
Right. So the other matchup in the Atlantic is Toronto and Tampa. Toronto has been playing. This is the best I think I've seen Toronto in years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still Toronto, a team I just don't trust in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's not, it doesn't make it any easier when you say, okay, so your first round matchup, a team that's not been able to get out of the first round in 17 years or 18 years is the back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, who still look about as good as ever.
I follow a lot of Boston Bruins, beat writers, and I just remember them saying, like, Boston, are you all sure you don't want the wild card here?
Right.
Go to the other side of the bracket.
Reading through something, it said something. It was like the Toronto Maple Leafs could make it out of the first round because they don't play Boston, and I was like, that stands to reason. But I mean, look, the Leafs are as good as ever. This is one of their best seasons in franchise history, which is a lot to say considering they've been around for a long time. Of course, Austin Matthews, 60 goals. He did get to 60 goals, did he not? I mean,
I believe so. I saw that alert. Yeah.
That's an impressive season. I mean, this is a team that can still do it. But look, you're coming into maybe the most complete team in hockey, and you have to play them coming off 2 cups, a team that knows what it takes to get there. And look, last year on the show, I took the Leafs. I said, look, they're going to make it. They're good. They've got all the
last year was set up for them. They divided it all up to East, West, Central and North. And the North was just the Canadian teams who outside Toronto are unreliable and not that great. I was like, if this team doesn't get to the Final Four or the semifinals, whatever they called it, I would be concerned. And they didn't. What happened? They got bounced in the first round. I believe the first round. Again, Montreal. Yeah. Who went on to go to the Stanley Cup, which was just weird. And now I think Montreal is in last place. I didn't even watch that Stanley Cup. I was so disgusted that Montreal was in it and that Tampa was in it. I was so, as a Boston fan, I was disgusted because I hate Tampa, because they've had our number in recent years in the playoffs. And then obviously there's the Montreal rivalry. So I didn't even watch the Stanley Cup. I was so disgusted.
No need. Yeah. That reminds me a few years back, the Super Bowl, whenever Baltimore took on San Francisco. and I was like, okay, so either Baltimore wins or San Francisco has as many as the Steelers. I don't want to watch this. This is terrible. Because the ideal solution is Baltimore wins. Absolutely not. I don't want that. Terrible. But back, looking at the hockey side of it, I gotta take Tampa Bay. I know, there's some of that, you can't win 3 in a row, but I think Tampa Bay is almost as good as ever. And I think the Leafs have been shaky in net. So when you're talking about a team that can score as quickly and as often and as deep as Tampa Bay can, it's not just the first line for them. They go all the way down. And that's even crazier when you're talking about a team that's that good up top, is that they can score throughout their lines. I don't know. I think the Leafs struggles continue. I'm nervous to pick them based on my track record.
I just don't trust them. I mean, like I said, I'm a big goal differential guy. They have, they're a better goal differential than Tampa. I just don't trust them. I got to see it first. And Tampa, has done it the last 2 years. I'm in the camp, though. I will say I don't think they're going to three-peat. I'm not sure the last time that's ever happened in hockey, although it has happened. I'm going to go with Tampa, more playoff experience. They're just as deep and talented as Toronto. So I will go with the Lightning as well, which brings us to your division, the Metropolitan Division. Carolina was the 1 seed. They will face my Boston Bruins. If of all the 1 seed and wild card matchups, this feels like the one with the biggest potential for an upset.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is like I talked in the beginning of this when we talked about the big game first round matchups. This is another one because this is going to be fun to watch. This is 2 teams that are pretty complete. Obviously there's going to be questions about both of them. The Hurricanes have some goaltending injuries and such. So, there's question marks, but given the 2 teams that are playing, this is going to be fun. I'm excited for this series because I think this has the potential to be the best series of the first round, 7 rounds, overtime game. That's what we're talking about with this series.
Yeah, so Boston has had Carolina's number in recent years in the playoffs. It happened in 2019 in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then it happened the following year, I believe, in the weird bubble postseason, and I think it was Canada.
That year doesn't. That year counts. But
it counts, but it doesn't. But Boston beat them both times. I don't want to just sit here and say Boston has their number because I do think this Carolina team is different. I think they're really, really talented. They're still very young. They have playoff experience. Like I just said, they've been deep in the playoffs before, but so is Boston. I'm curious what you think.
I think that playoff experience matters. We've talked about it already in a couple of the series that we've touched on. So I think what it comes down to, I think this is another question of goaltending. So like I said, Carolina's starting goaltender is Frederik Andersen. So if you are following correctly, he was the goaltender for the Leafs last year and previously. So a guy that has also had some question marks in the playoffs and coming into an injury, is he going to be fine? So the Hurricanes actually won I believe it's called the William M. Jennings Trophy, which is like the best 2 goaltenders in the league or whatever. So, they're good there. But when you're talking about injuries and you're talking about a Boston team that can score at will when they want to.
I will say this also, Boston's goaltender, I don't know his first name. Ullmark is his last name. I think it's Patrick Ullmark. On fire right now. I think he has a save percentage like close to 95% right now.
And that's about as good as you can ask for heading into the playoffs. Typically if you're like, oh, he's 92%, you're like, well, we're sitting pretty. Anything over that, you're about destined to win some games. And that's what I think. Now, I think Carolina will give them a game, but I could also see this honestly could be a coin flip for me as far as who wins this series, because I think both teams are good enough to make the Stanley Cup. I think both teams are good enough to play in the Stanley Cup and potentially win it. But in the first rounds, they're going to, one of them's going to be gone. So in a coin flip, I'll take the Hurricanes because I know you'll probably take the Bruins.
Yeah, but I don't want to do it. That's the thing. I'm biased, but this Boston team has kind of been inconsistent this year. This feels like the last run with Bergeron and Marchand and this core. I'm going to go with Boston just because, 2 teams that are about even, I think. I think it comes down to goaltending. And I think Boston has that advantage right now.
Yeah.
So the other matchup, your matchup, and I think this has to be your other big three. I think this is going to be a really good matchup here. The Rangers and Pittsburgh Penguins.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is the Rangers are one of those teams. They are so young right now, and we knew this as a potential when they were drafting high.
Yes.
We knew this as a potential. We're like, oh, if they have Capo Caco and Alexis Lafreniere and they build up this team, they're going to
be. They've drafted really well, and then they've spent money, and got like an Artemi Panarin. I think he's still there. They've done a really good job with this rebuild, and they're probably a year ahead, maybe even more than that.
Oh yeah, well, and it helps to have the veteran guys, Adam Fox and Chris Kreider, or cogs of that team too. So it certainly helps, but. I mean, looking at it from the other end too with the Penguins, I mean, you want to talk about a veteran presence. They've had the same three guys in town since 2006. I mean, these guys have won 3 cups together. Letang, Malkin, Crosby. They know how to win. I mean, they're not strangers to winning. But the only thing that scares me is their playoff record the last few years has been pretty subpar, where they can't seem to get out of the first round. Ever since they won that second cup, they've not been able to do it. Now, one thing I think that has been better for the Penguins this year that it has in the previous few is their goaltending. Tristan Jarry was an all-star. Casey DeSmith struggled at first, but has came on the last few weeks of the season. And with Jarry potentially missing the first few playoff games due to that injury, Pittsburgh's going to need Casey DeSmith to be solid because, I mean, the thing is a young team like the Rangers, they're just going to come out firing. I mean, that's what they have to do to win, and they very well could. But I mean, the thing is this is very much a youth versus experience matchup, because I mean the Penguins have some younger guys, but we're really talking about a young core of guys that could be dangerous in the league for a long time with New York.
Yeah, I'm looking at goal differential. It's roughly the same. The Rangers are just +4 better, 4 goals better. Mm-hmm. I think it's about even. I think I know who you're going to pick. Go ahead.
Yeah, so based on me taking the Hurricanes, so you can take the Bruins, I'll take the Penguins, and you can take the Rangers. But this is very even. This is very even. Don't get me wrong. If we walk out of this, I know I'm a Penguins fan, but if we walk out of this and the Rangers win it in 6, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to take the Penguins. I think that given some of the factors. This could be the last year of Malkin and Letang, and they really want to win this time. They really think they can. I'm going to give them that slight edge over the Rangers, just kind of on a personal basis. But this is good. You're right. This is my other game, my other series. So I'm going to give it to the Penguins, but very, very close, hard fought series for sure.
I'm actually going to agree with you. I think playoff experience matters. These two teams are about even. I just don't know what to expect with the Rangers. The only playoff experience I think these guys have is from the bubble 2 years ago. In a series, I believe that they lost to the Hurricanes, who went on to lose to the Bruins in the real, 16-team postseason. But I'm going to go Pittsburgh. I don't know. I'm going to lean playoff experience. I think that is big, especially in hockey. So now we go over to the West. Where it is Colorado and Nashville. I'll be honest, there are maybe 1 or 2 of these Western Conference matchups that intrigue me. I think the West is very top heavy. The East is much, much deeper.
Oh yeah. Well, and this is so oddly though with this, I think just looking at it, even just being more of the casual fan, again, the West, not my side of the house there, but I would have never if you would have told me the Predators won the season series against the Avalanche 3-1, I would have never believed that. I would have just deferred and been like, the Avalanche smoked them because they're good. But we talked about this last year. The Avalanche suffer from that disease of top line scoring.
Well, I was just about to say I have hammered the Colorado drum for the last 2 or 3 years, and they always have let me down, and it's not from lack of talent. And, they keep trying to get better. They have added some guys and improved their roster. They still can't get over the hump. I think this is a difficult matchup. I think Nashville is very well run as an organization. They have some guys that that can play. I don't think it's nearly as talented of a team, from 2017 that got that second wild card and went on a deep run to the Stanley Cup Final and played your Pittsburgh Penguins. I was actually living in Nashville during that time. That was a really fun few weeks.
Let me say side note to that. I grew to not like Nashville during that series, not because of Nashville. I respect the Predators. I respect everyone that played. But whenever they're on TV and they're trotting out Luke Bryan and they're like, oh, here's Luke Bryan in the Nashville Predators jersey. He's like, I've been watching hockey since I was 4. I'm like, no, you haven't.
Yeah.
No, you have. Don't lie. Don't lie to me and try to sell me this because you're a country music student.
I will say this: hockey fans will call bullshit so quick. They're a very loyal guy. Like, they look down on anyone who's not like on their level of hockey.
Don't tell me Toby Keith's a hockey fan, because Toby Keith has his like football and college football, but he's not a hockey fan. Just we can have our own lanes. That's fine.
That's hilarious. Who you like?
So I think this series will probably only be about 5 games for the Avalanche, but it's going to be very hard fought, because two of the games that the Predators won were in overtime. So, I mean, really, when it comes to overtime in hockey, I mean, I know it sounds obvious, but it really can go either way. So, I mean, I'm going to give the Avalanche the advantage in the postseason. I don't think Nashville's as deep or as well-rounded as they have been in the past few years. So I'm going to give the Avalanche a 5-game series, but it's going to be tough. I think the Avalanche come out, but it'll be an interesting series.
I'm going to agree. The Nashville team that beat, I remember they swept Chicago and went under the Stanley Cup. They had one of the deepest blue lines that I've ever seen. It went 3 or 4 lines deep with quality players, and who have now gone on to other teams or have stayed in Nashville and are now the top guys, because like PK Subban, I don't think is in the league anymore. And then they had Pekka Rinne in the goal, who's not in goal anymore. So I just think this Nashville team is very different. Going to be interesting, but I like Colorado. Too much star power. I'm going to go with the Avalanche. This is probably the only Western Conference matchup that I really am intrigued to watch, and that's Minnesota and St. Louis. My buddy Steven is a big St. Louis Blues fan. He has said for years that Minnesota is the thorn in St. Louis's side. So I'm curious to see what you think.
I think this is another one of those coin flip matchups. So actually, I was reading today, the Blues are actually 9-0-1 in their last 10 regular season games.
Yeah, the Blues are hot right now.
But playoffs doesn't really matter. You throw all that out the window. So I mean, the Wild are young, they're scrappy, but I mean the Blues. It again, we've said this with other teams, but it's not the same Blues team that won a Stanley Cup just a few years back. There are pieces there, sure, but I think that this is another one of those situations where you're talking youth versus experience. But one other wild card of this whole thing.
I don't mean to cut you off, but you brought up last 10 games. The Blues are 7-2-1. Minnesota is 8-1-1. So both are entering pretty hot.
Okay.
Goal differential, Blues have the advantage at +69. Minnesota is +57. So I just want to throw that out there.
So this is another one of those that could go 7. I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, this is another one of those that could go 7. I think one of the wild cards of this, though, and again, it seems obvious, but when you're talking youth versus experience, the Wild don't have as much experience. Their goaltender does. Their goaltender's won 3 Stanley Cup championships.
And who is this?
Marc-Andre Fleury.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, this is, and I might be a homer because he's a Pittsburgh guy and he went there with the Golden Knights, but.
Well, this was strange. He was traded last offseason, right, to Chicago. And what was the deal in Chicago?
I mean, Chicago is just not built to win. I mean, that's part of the problem. And I think Vegas kind of gave him a cold shoulder on the way out. I mean, it seems kind of weird.
Yeah, because what happened last year? He wouldn't play or something like that. Was that the deal?
Yeah, like he didn't want to play with Chicago. And I mean, honestly, given Chicago's season, I never support a guy that's like, I don't want to be there. I don't like that. But I mean, I can justify it. I mean, Chicago wasn't going to be a great team and didn't want to be there. But, at least when he was on the outs in Pittsburgh, like it makes sense, the expansion. And then he starts with the Knights and he's one of the franchise guys. But then for them to just kind of be like, yeah, we're moving on. Like it was weird, but I don't know. He's seems to be home in Minnesota, and could be a big X factor. For
I'd be very curious. Let me pull up his stats in Minnesota. I'd be curious to see how well he's been playing. All right, Mark, Andre. Actually, what am I doing this on my phone? I have my laptop. And I'm not screen recording like I usually do.
Because the phone is the easiest way.
I'm so used to doing it on my phone because of screen recording. I don't like to show like what I'm searching on Google. Although that sounds nefarious and sinister.
No, actually, will you screen record, please?
Okay, so in Minnesota, his GAA is 2.74, not terrific. And then saves 304, save percentage 91. So, but experience.
I mean, it matters. I mean, I think that sometimes too, and I say this as we talk about the importance of goaltending. I think we're harsh on the goaltender oftentimes when we could also be more harsh on the defense, because that's what really is a big factor too. You want to blame the guy that lets it in, but if the other guys don't play any defense, it doesn't really matter. But I'm actually, for this series, I'm going to take St. Louis. I think they have the upper hand. I think they're probably a slightly better hockey team right now, but I think this is another one that you're probably talking 6 or 7 games. It's two pretty complete teams, but I just have to give the nod to the Blues.
I'm actually going to agree with you, and I hate to do it because I hate St. Louis ever since the 2019 Stanley Cup. And for those that don't understand, I've sworn off just about anything St. Louis. My friend down here, my only friend down here in Texas, I'm still making new ones, isn't much of a sports fan, so he doesn't understand where I come from in a lot of things. Like, he made fun of me, like for the season opener for West Virginia football. I drove to Houston, downtown Houston, and met with the Houston WVU alumni and watched the game with them, wanted to be with my own people. And he was like, "You drove all that way just for a game?" And I was like, "You don't get it." And then last year he wanted me to go out. He wanted to go out. He wanted me to go out with him and drink all day or something. I said, "No, I'm going to watch the spring game instead." And he made fun of me for it. So I have told him that I have sworn off anything Anheuser-Busch in regards to beer, and he doesn't understand why. And I told him it's because St. Louis beat Boston in the 2019 Stanley Cup Final, and I have not drank anything Anheuser-Busch ever since.
It really is. Sometimes you don't understand how hard it is to be a sports fan and to explain that to somebody else, why your loyalties are where they are. I will not drink Anheuser-Busch because I hate St. Louis because they beat Boston. The normal person that's sitting there in the corner knitting is like, "What are you talking about?" Like, look, you can't understand. This doesn't make any sense to anybody else. I get it. I've been there. You don't want to. I'll tell you one real quick. So I've actually been getting back into NASCAR a little bit personally.
Oh wow!
So I used to be a fan way back in the day, and so did my dad. So the driver that we did not like was Tony Stewart. If you know,
not very many people like him.
I was going to say, if you know even a little bit about NASCAR, you know that name.
I know my grandfather hated him. He was a big NASCAR fan.
Yeah. So I always used to get Powerade before games. Like, that was the thing. Like, I knew that we were going to buy the one that was a little bit cheaper. It's the way that it works, right? Tastes about the same. I mean, we could debate that too, but whatever.
I see where you're going with this.
All of a sudden, all this Gatorade just starts flowing into our house. I'm like, what in the hell? I'm like, that we never get Gatorade. This is like $3 more for a 12-pack. I'm like, Dad, why are you getting me Gatorade? He's like, "I'll never buy Powerade. They're a Tony Stewart sponsor." And it's like, as I get older, it makes sense. It makes sense. Like, I get it.
No, I'm dead serious. After the Stanley Cup, I went through, because I had a blog post and I wrote, I just said, I hate the city of St. Louis. That's all it was. And I went through and I talked about my heartache. And I went through and I said, you know what? The Rams made the right decision to move. I've always hated the Cardinals. And you know what? While I'm at it, I'm going to swear off Anheuser-Busch. And I went through and I was like, all right, who is owned or distributed by Anheuser-Busch? I think Bud Light and Budweiser, all the Buds. And I think Busch might fall into that. And there was something else. There was another one that a beer that I really like, and I haven't had it since. I think Michelob. That's it. Michelob
Mm.
Ultra. Gary Lotsky's beer for anyone that knows that. Head of sport management program at WVU. That was his beverage of choice, was a Michelob Ultra. I haven't had a Michelob Ultra in 3 years, and I miss it, but I can't do it. You know what I've done? Because I refuse to drink Miller Lite, even though I'm a huge Packers fan, and that's where they're located, is Milwaukee. I hate it because it's terrible. I've resorted to Coors, which I've always liked, but I get the negative connotation. It is like water.
Yeah, one time at a Pirates game, someone was coming down the steps there, and he's like, "Coors Light, water." I'm like, "You could just save yourself some time and just say water." Like, everyone, we all get it.
Hey, I've always liked Coors, but I know it is like drinking water. But I refuse. Miller's terrible, and I'm not drinking Anheuser-Busch. So I have reached out and tried IPAs, so I do have that going for me.
Okay.
But anyway,
with all that being said, the Wild.
No, I'm going St. Louis.
Ooh, okay. All right.
I said I hate to do it.
What's it going to take? Let me ask this. What's it going to take to get you back to that? Does Boston have to avenge that loss in a Stanley Cup? Is there anything that can get you back to it?
Either they win a Stanley Cup sometime in the near future, either the Blues move to a new city, or the Bruins beat the Blues in a Stanley Cup, then in that scenario, I would go back. Yeah, something like that.
All right, mark it down. Bruins win cup. I mean, easy things. Bruins win.
If the Bruins win the Stanley Cup this year, in the very near future, because in 30 years, who knows, I might give up at that point and give in and drink Anheuser-Busch again. But
you're sitting there, you're 60 years old. Why don't you drink Michelob? I don't even know. I don't even remember.
I don't even remember at this point. That's funny. But no, I'll go with St. Louis. I mean, they're a really well-run organization. They're hot. They have playoff experience. I don't know how far of a run they can make, but I like them in this matchup. So then that brings us to, I believe, yes, the Pacific Division, which is kind of a crapshoot. Number 1 seed Calgary takes on Dallas. I'm really curious what you think about that.
I mean, I could summarize it in one sentence. I'm taking Calgary. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. The Stars squeaked in. So, I mean,
we'll pull up their numbers here real quick.
When it comes to this, I know we've talked about, the Stanley Cup, anything can happen. And I genuinely believe that. But I think when you're talking about what would be considered like a 1-4 in the East, it's just so much more evenly matched. And I just think that even though, a couple years ago, we're talking about the Flames is really not that much of a threat. But I think just given the current 2022 teams, I don't really think it's much of a matchup. I think this is one of those maybe, even 5 games. I mean, if I was going to pick a sweep, I would pick this one to be the sweep. I would pick the Flames in 4 if you were like, you have to pick one sweep.
Oh, wow. Okay. So the Stars didn't even reach 100 points. And they are -8 in goal differential. Calgary is plus 85. Points.
Austin Matthews had 60 goals.
Yeah.
Dallas, grow up.
Dallas scored 238 goals, allowed 246 goals. Calgary is plus 85 in goal differential, which is the best in the West. So I would go with the Flames as well, even though that name makes no sense.
Calgary. Yeah. Well, I mean, they have a super top, threats with Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, they have good talent right now, and they are hot for, not to be funny, Flames hot, but they're a good team.
I didn't even put that together.
They're a good team right now, but again, if you said take and pick one sweep, this would be it, and it wouldn't really be much of a debate. Yeah.
So this other matchup here, I'm not really looking forward to either, but it might be somewhat entertaining. I can go at 6 or 7 games. Edmonton and LA. Edmonton, look, that's another team I've beat the drum for the last few years, and they have let me down. I'm a big Connor McDavid fan, but it's about like kind of like cheering for Aaron Rodgers. At some point, you gotta put it together, man.
Yeah, you got to answer the call. Well,
Yeah.
Okay, so honestly, whenever I was researching to talk with you on this, to talk about all the matchups and stuff, I'm scrolling through the bracket and I get to this matchup. I go, LA's in the playoffs. Look at that.
I didn't even know. And LA has not been that good. Their goal differential is hang on. Their goal differential is +3.
Yeah, so some hockey fan, I would never claim to be the magic NHL, know all, but I legitimately looked at this matchup and said, the Kings are in the playoffs. Would you look at that? Beautiful.
The Oilers are +38, by the way, in goal differential.
That kind of surprised. I mean, I guess that's a product of, we talked about it with Colorado, and we'll talk about it again here, is the top line. I mean, when you have McDavid and Draisaitl on the top line, you're kind of limiting yourself to all that scoring being and coming from a top line. But you're right. I think answering the call is something that we have to talk about when it comes to these guys. I mean, look, Draisaitl and McDavid are two of the best players in the league. They have been for a few years. This might be an easier first round matchup for them, but at the same time, we said that in the bubble. And then they got a limit. I realize that's different, and there's other factors. You can say it's not real, whatever. But at the same time, these two have to answer the call. I think this is going to be a year that they get over that hump, that they're able to get out of the first round and make some noise. But at the same time, it's always in the back of your mind until it actually happens.
This is a fairly favorable matchup. I mean, I know the Kings have had a lot of success in the last decade, but a lot of those guys aren't with the team anymore. They're kind of an aging team that's been kind of in purgatory. They're not rebuilding. They're not really, playing that well. I think they're still a really good defensive team. They only allowed 236 goals, but that helps. Having a really hot goaltender helps. But at some point, you have to be able to score goals, I believe, and the Kings can't do that. So I'm going to take the Oilers, but I wouldn't be shocked if this thing goes like 7 games.
Yeah, I'll say the Oilers in 6. I think the Kings can probably squeak out a couple. I mean, they have a little bit of experience. They have guys that are still there that have been deep in the playoffs before. Guys like Drew Doughty. I mean, they know, but at the same time, I think this is one of those times where you have to take the youth. I think this is one of those series that when the Kings win, they'll win by a goal. But when the Oilers win, they're going to win by about 3 or 4.
Yeah, I remember that happening. The Stanley Cup series that actually really got me into hockey was in 2011, oddly enough, when the Bruins won. That was what I was cheering for Boston kind of that whole way for whatever reason. I was a Celtics fan at the time. I followed them closely. And they might have been eliminated, and I just latched onto the Bruins, and they went on to win the Stanley Cup. And I remember that when they played Vancouver, and Vancouver that went 7 games in the series. Every Vancouver win came down to the wire, like one goal came in overtime, but every time Boston won, you can go back and look, I think it was all like 4-0, 5-1, stuff like that.
And it's that to me signals that a team is significantly better than the other way, in my opinion, because then the other team has to fight to get over that. The other team has to play down. There are other factors, but to me, that means that in a matchup like this, that means that the Oilers are clearly a better team, but they're going to play down to their competition a few times and might lose out on a couple games. But I would say the Oilers move on in relatively easy fashion.
All right, so we are heading to the second round, back to the East, where I believe we both have Florida and Tampa. So Battle of the Sunshine State. Who you got?
Yeah, so this is one of those things that still concerns me, because when talking
this is a brutal matchup, I think.
Right. And the thing is you don't want to think about it, but I do think it's there. I think there is a little bit of that mental block whenever you're Florida, because you're looking at this from the idea that we are good. We can get over this team that has beaten us and has won cups, and we just can't do it. But it's still the Lightning. And I realize that three-peats aren't something that you would traditionally
but this Lightning team, I said it last year. I said I'm not going to pick a team to win back-to-back, and I generally don't for any sport. But I was like, this team, I'm not going to pick them to win it all, but like runner up, semifinals, like very much in play. I'm not that stupid.
Right. Well, and of the second round matchups that we have, or I have with my teams, I got to take the Lightning. If Florida proves it to me that they can actually overcome this, then good on them, and I'll take that as an L. But at the same time, right now, picking what I know about the game and what I've seen with these teams and how they play against each other, I have to pick Tampa Bay. I can't pick against them in this matchup.
All right, so the other Eastern Conference matchup, you have Carolina and Pittsburgh. I have Boston and Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm. I hate to pick against my team, but it comes down to that block again that I feel like they just can't get over the hump. I think Carolina has the experience and they have kind of the flow right now that they've been able to work on. So I think if Carolina is able to get out of the first round relatively clean, I think they beat Pittsburgh in the second round.
This is tough because, like I said, Boston has been very, I think, inconsistent. Although since January, they've been a completely different team. Pittsburgh always seems to have our number in the regular season. Not very many postseason matchups between the two teams, so I don't really know what to expect there. But regular season wise, I mean, this has been going on for a few years. Pittsburgh has always kind of owned Boston. And same thing with Washington a few years ago. Washington, it felt like Boston didn't beat Washington for 5 years. And then now they meet and Boston seems to win every time. This is tough. Pittsburgh has home ice. I'm not sure that matters a whole lot. Do you agree with that or disagree?
I think that it should, because you see these games. Like I think one that sticks in my mind is like Winnipeg when they do the whiteouts and stuff, and you look up in the stands and you're like, you think this would matter? I think in hockey, I don't think home ice matters as much as it does in other sports.
Really, the only sport I think that home ice, field, court really matters is the NBA. For whatever reason, it's near impossible to win 2 road games in the NBA.
And honestly, I think second to that, in my opinion, would probably be the NFL, because I mean there
but even really then, we've seen teams go on the road. We just saw it with San Francisco and Green Bay and a few other the Rams and Tampa.
But then you see, you're right, and then you see something like that, and then I think to myself, I'm like, does it really matter if you're that good, if you're better than they are? So, but yeah, I think in hockey it matters about as little as any sport, and I think that home you say that, and I mean you can even hear that when you hear people talk about it. They don't talk about, oh well, they have home ice, so that matters.
Hockey is such a weird sport too. Like I can think, like in any other sport, like especially the NBA, if you're up 3-2 and you lose game 6. You're not winning game 7 just about 99% of the time. It's such a momentum heavy league or a sport. But hockey, I can remember Pittsburgh was up 3-1 in the series to Washington in 2018, I believe. Lost back-to-back games. And I remember my friend William, who's a big Washington fan, saying, like, they're not going to win, or we're going to win game 7. Like, they have no momentum. And Pittsburgh won game 7. Just a weird situation. Just hockey's weird. I don't know.
But that's what makes it fun, because at the same time, when you say it's weird, you really can't predict it. And home ice may not matter, and all of those factors considered, that's what makes this series, all these series, fun, is you really don't know what could happen. We could honestly, as we sit here and talk about this podcast and all these teams that win, it could be the complete opposite of everything that we've said, and we'd still have fun with it, because that's what hockey is.
So Boston is plus 34 in goal differential. Pittsburgh is plus 43. I mean, kind of the same. I know Pittsburgh is up 9, but basically might as well be even.
I'll tell you this, when it comes to Pittsburgh, they have also suffered this year too from some of that depth scoring. They've not gotten the same production out of guys like Evan Rodriguez and Kasperi Kapanen in those bottom lines that they typically are used to. So if they're going to make a cup run, if they're legitimately going to go to the Stanley Cup, their third and fourth lines have to perform like they did during their actual cup runs. But if they stick what they've done in the regular season, you could count them out in the first round against New York. And that's why I fear that. And I think that Carolina in my scenario will beat them in the second round.
I mean, I think it's a favorable matchup. I don't view either of these teams as like, I like on the precipice of like being a real contender. You know what I mean? Like I get that, but I don't view either as being one of the top two teams in the East, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to go Pittsburgh here. I don't want to show my bias too much.
God bless you.
I just don't. I don't like being that guy. I don't like being that guy. I love my buddy Steven that comes on for baseball, but there was a stretch there. He finally quit this year. He was picking the Cardinals to win because he's a huge St. Louis fan. He was picking the Cardinals to win the division and win the World Series like 3 to 4 years in a row.
Okay. In fairness, though, in my last show that I did, the old podcast that I did with the other Ryan, every week I would pick the Steelers, but that's legitimately because I thought that they were better than what they would walk out there and perform as. It never clicked in my mind to learn. So I understand the bias, but I've also gotten to the point now where I have to be a little more realistic. So I will. I
don't trust Boston. I don't trust Boston to get to the Eastern Conference Final.
I'm glad you trust Pittsburgh to get there.
And I don't really trust Pittsburgh, but between the two teams, I don't know. I'm just going to lean Pittsburgh.
Man, I hope you're right.
So then we go to the West, where I believe we both had the same. Yeah, Colorado. You took Minnesota? No, we both took St. Louis.
Yes.
Colorado and St. Louis.
Given that matchup, I would take Colorado. So I'm actually gonna. Last year, my team that I talked about being able to get over the hump was the Leafs. Didn't happen, but I'm going to try again this year, and I'm going to give that nod to the Avalanche. I think that the Avalanche can do it. I think if they put all their pieces together, click at the same time, get a little bit more depth scoring than they have, I think that they'll get over that hump, so I'm going to give it to the Avalanche.
Gosh, I was so set to pick against Colorado. I mean, their goals scoring are about the same. Colorado has scored 312. St. Louis has scored 311. Colorado is plus 78 and goal differential. St. Louis is plus 69 too. And Colorado is kind of hobbling. They're 4-5-1 in their last 10. Give me St. Louis.
I can see the smoke coming out of your ears. And
I
it
don't
actually
like it.
spells out, I hate St. Louis.
I don't like it.
It's actually pretty impressive.
I don't trust Colorado. I beat that drum too many times. I'm kind of done. I need to see it.
Yeah, well, we'll differ on that, but I mean, again, it's another one of those things. If Colorado doesn't show up and they even lost in the first round, it'd be like, yeah, well, I mean, that's what they do. But I'm gonna put my trust in them this year to be the team that finally gets over the hump.
All right, the other matchup, I believe we both had Calgary and Edmonton, two Canadian teams.
Yeah, which is great for Canada. I mean, Canada deserves their teams in there.
No, they
I mean,
don't. No.
You don't think?
I get this is your sport. I get that this is their sport, but I want to see the drought going. I'm all for America.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll talk about this, but I think America might still have the upper hand at the end of this. But look, we just talked about how I'm going to trust the Avalanche to get over the hump. I'm picking the Oilers here. I think this is probably one of the best of the second round matchups. Even though, I think the reason being is both of these teams, in my opinion, are going to get out of the first round relatively clean. So I think that they'll be pretty ready for each other when it comes down to this. This will be a fast series because both of these teams are goal scoring and a little more high flying. But when it comes down to it, I'm going to give a slight edge to the better players, which I think are McDavid and Draisaitl, over guys like Gaudreau and Tkachuk, which I think are fantastic players. But I think at the same time, just given the history, I'm going to give it to Edmonton. Probably 7 games, probably another 7-game series.
Very, very interesting. I'm going to disagree. I'll go Calgary. I think that they are the team everybody's sleeping on. I mean, they are the second best team in goal differential this year. Florida is first, Calgary is second, and I don't think anybody would have guessed that come playoff time. And I don't trust Edmonton. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they got bounced first round again.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, literally our last two matchups, you are the one who's not trusting them, and I'm gonna put my eggs in the other bag. I'm gonna try it again. You know, I tried it last year with other teams, but I'm gonna try with these guys. We'll see. Ultimately, at the end of the day, at some point, Connor McDavid is going to have to win a Stanley Cup. I'm not saying it's this year, but at some point they're going to have to get over that hump. And Leon Draisaitl's in that camp too. I mean, both of these guys are excellent hockey players, and they deserve that. It might not be this year, but at some point they're going to have to prove that. And I think that it would be this year. Plus, I think an Oilers Avalanche matchup would be fun to watch too, given the top line talent.
All right, so we're heading back to the East. Eastern Conference Final. You have, I believe, Tampa and Carolina.
Yep. I know you said it a couple minutes ago, you don't like to pick repeats.
Yeah.
Which certainly would lead me to believe that you don't like to pick three-peats. You wouldn't pick a team to make the title.
Dude, honestly, I say that, but in my mind, I'm looking at the way this bracket, I'm going, by just matchups. And I'm like, I don't know if any of these teams are beating the Lightning.
I really think the East favors Tampa Bay. Yeah. I really do. I mean, the East, you're right. I do agree that I think that the East is deeper. I think that there's more cup contenders and potential cup winners on the Eastern side. And maybe some of that's biased from not watching as much of the West. But I think that their East is deeper, but I still think the king of it is in Tampa Bay. I would never be the person to sit here and be like, oh, yeah, you just pick the same team because they're great all the time. But
no, it's strictly matchup here. I'm looking to pick against Tampa. Trust me. Same with St. Louis. But they're the team I trust the most. No, I will say here, Carolina strikes me as a team that's ready to get over that hump. They're kind of a team that no one really gave much of a chance. It's not like Edmonton or Colorado where everybody has said, Colorado, one of the best young rosters. Edmonton, two of the best players in hockey. That have let us down. No one has really talked that way about Carolina. Very young team, very deep young team with talent. And I think they're poised to break out and surprise everybody. But this is a tough matchup. I could see Carolina winning.
Yeah, I think one of the things that works against Carolina, and we have the bias as fans to look at it from the idea that who is your superstar? Right? It's easy to identify on a lot of teams. We have this bias in every sport that we're in because it's like, even just the NFL, you're like, oh, the Chiefs. Well, I know Patrick Mahomes, or the Bengals. Well, I know Burrow. I know Jamar Chase. I mean, you know who those stars are.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Steven Stamkos hurt?
Steven Stamkos always is hurt in some degree.
I thought I heard he was out, but it's not. But regardless, they still have.
This is one of the healthier seasons that he's had. This is actually, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first season that he's went over 100 points, either in a very long time or for the first time in his career.
Okay.
So that to me spells that he's actually working on all cylinders. So barring something that God forbid, I don't want to see him out of the playoffs because I for the captain to be out all the time, that's just, it doesn't do it for me. I'm not into the injury game. It's not as fun, but Carolina doesn't have that superstar. They don't have the Connor McDavid or the guy, but at the same time, when you have a good team, a great team, you don't need that superstar because they're not carrying them, because you're getting depth scoring, you're getting good goaltending. And if the Canes can ultimately win this, the look back of Frederik Andersen to the Leafs is just going to be a peace sign, because he's going to be like, we couldn't make it out of the first round, and here I am in the Stanley Cup Final with a completely different team.
Yeah. So I have Tampa and Pittsburgh, and I will follow your lead here. I will go Tampa. Like I said, I don't trust Pittsburgh really to get this far, but I trust Boston even less. I'm going straight matchups here. I think this would favor Tampa a lot.
I think in your matchup, I think the one thing that really works against Pittsburgh is the age. We talk about experience versus youth and stuff, and both of these teams are very experienced when it comes to the playoffs. But I think Pittsburgh just gets tired easier. And like we said in the last round, if they don't get the depth scoring at any point during these matchups, it's going to be bad.
All right, so heading to the West, where we No, we're different here too. So you have, I think, Colorado and Edmonton, correct?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
So I say that these are the two teams. I'm going to put my trust in these two teams to get there. I think that this is the year that they both get there. And you know what? I'm going to give the hump finally getting over and making the Stanley Cup to the Edmonton Oilers. I'm going to give it
Wow.
I'm going to give it to McDavid and Draisaitl over the Avalanche.
The way you started that, I was like, you're not being specific on which one.
Yep. So because they're both
Right,
my trust teams. I'm going to trust them to make it. But look, I think Edmonton's a little bit deeper when it comes to everything that they have. Both of them have that first line that's absolutely ridiculous. But I think this year, given what I've seen and the little I've watched of both of these teams, I think that Edmonton's a little bit better throughout. And that includes defensively and goaltending. So I'm going to give them the slight edge. I think this is a series that could go 7 again. I'm really hopeful for the long series when it comes to some of these. But I think with the way it played out, I'm going to give it to Edmonton to make the Stanley Cup and hopefully give them their first Stanley Cup. Also, sidebar, the Steelers just took Cam Hayward's brother in the draft. So we knew that was going to happen, but
the tight end from Michigan State.
Yep.
Interesting.
Just came across my screen. So we're all about the brothers in Pittsburgh.
Edmonton's won a Stanley Cup.
They have, not in a while.
Oh, okay.
I
was like, yeah, they had Gretzky. They won, I think, 4.
Not since the 80, whatever it was in the 80s, early 80s, 82, 83. I don't remember exactly, but
didn't they win 4 in a row? Or am I thinking of the Islanders? I know the Islanders have done that.
Yeah, so Edmonton was like the team in I think the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, when you have Wayne Gretzky, I mean, you're pretty much.
I think those overlap. But now that I think about it, I think those overlap. I think the Islanders won like 79 to 83. And then I think they played Edmonton one of those years. And like that was the end of the Islanders run. And then that started Edmonton's run. I'm pretty sure I've looked it up and that's how it went. I could be wrong though. So I have, I believe, St. Louis and Calgary. And I'm not picking St. Louis any further. This is as far as my respect for them. Look, I'm biased, but I have my biases. But I'm willing to throw respect when it comes to it. I respect St. Louis as an organization. They're well run. They're well coached. They have good players. I like Calgary this year. I mean, they've been really good, flying under the radar. I think they're in that sweet spot. You don't want to be the top team. You don't want to be, the team that squeaks in. You want to be near the top, but not enough to win the President's Trophy.
Yeah, well, clearly not the President's. Honestly, if you can throw a game to not win the President's Trophy, you're probably better at it at this point.
All right, so Stanley Cup Final. You have Tampa and Edmonton.
Tampa and Edmonton. So this is the ultimate been there versus we're hopeful that they get there. Again, I'm one of those people that I root for people to win championships, the legends of the game. And there's no reason at all that some point in their career that, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl should win a championship. They absolutely should. They're good enough to do it, but it's not going to be this year. I would never sit here and I would never actively in my mind say I'm going to pick a 3-peat. But when I'm looking through this bracket,
when I go matchup by matchup,
when I'm thinking of these teams and I'm thinking of the way that they're built, I'm thinking of the way everything's compiled, it might be the unpopular pick, but I have to pick Tampa again. I
went into this saying I'm not going
to.
I went into this. I was like, I'm not going to pick Toronto. I'm not going to pick Tampa, to win it all. I'm not going to pick like maybe Colorado or someone like that. And then it got to the second round for me. In my head, I was looking over the bracket and I was like, Tampa over Florida. Who's on the other side? Boston and Pittsburgh. Who's in the West?
Yeah. Oh, no.
I don't see how Tampa doesn't come out of this thing, winning it all. So just I think it favors them a lot if it's the way my bracket goes. So I have Tampa and Calgary. I've been very high on Calgary for whatever reason. I don't know why. I just think they're flying under the radar. They have some really good Americans, which I can respect a lot. I'm just
Throwing a
not
lot of shade to the
sure.
Canadians.
I just don't think they're on the same level. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if Calgary gets bounced. Part of the reason why they have, 111 points and plus 85 goal differential is their division. I mean, Edmonton, good, not great. The Kings can't score. Vegas was underperforming. Vancouver's not that great. San Jose stinks. Anaheim is rebuilding. And Seattle's a brand new team. So they could be one and done for all I know. But I'm picking them to go deep.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like you said, you pick matchup on matchup, and I probably did very much the same thing you did. Is just looking at this, each individual matchup, trying to think, well, who does this favor and whatnot. And at the end of the day, I still find myself saying, and I tried it a different way too. I'm like, okay, I don't want to pick Tampa, but who do I think could win this Stanley Cup that's not Tampa Bay? And I tried it that way, and I was like, it's still Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I don't know who's better than Tampa Bay right now, given all the factors. I know there's teams with more points. I know there's teams that are ranked above them. Florida theoretically should be better. But in this setting, in this scenario, I would never pick a three-peat, but here I am doing it. I think Tampa Bay takes it again. That will probably make me not like them. So I don't want them to win anymore. But at the same time, they're just good enough to do it.
Yeah, let's look at the rest of the East. So let's go Florida. Florida has been terrific all season, but they have the President's Trophy curse, if you want to believe that, which I think is proven, but it's not like it hasn't happened ever. I think the last winner of the President's Trophy to win the Stanley Cup was fairly recently, was it not, in the last decade or so?
Yeah, but I think it's only happened maybe once or twice. I know it's not happened often.
I still know the odds aren't great, but it has happened, and it's happened fairly recently, I believe. But they have the President's Trophy curse, and we don't really know what to expect from Sergei Bobrovsky. He could be good, he could be bad. It's kind of in between with him, or not really in between with him come postseason time. Then you got Washington, who hasn't escaped the first round since winning the Stanley Cup. You got Toronto, who can't get past the first round. Then Tampa, and then Carolina's just young, kind of lacks a superstar. Boston is, I think, aging. The window is closing. The Rangers are really good and really young, but we don't really know what they can do. And Pittsburgh's kind of in the same boat as Boston. Really good, but I think the window is closing and they're aging a little bit.
Yeah, I do agree, and we've talked about it a few times, that I think that the East is deeper.
Yeah.
I think the East has ultimately better teams, but given the way that this shuffles out, who could ultimately win the Cup from the East? If you are like, who are the teams that could ultimately win the Cup from the East? If you make me pick three teams, I would probably say Carolina, Florida, and Tampa Bay. I think they're the three teams that can definitely do it. But I think of those three, it's clearly Tampa Bay. And it's not just because they've proven, it's kind of because they've proven it and done it for 2 years in a row.
But the other two have their flaws and uncertainty.
Sure. But at the same time, I just look at it matchup to matchup, and I keep saying, I'm like, no one is better right now than Tampa Bay. They're just the most complete team in all that they do. They're good enough to score at will. They're good enough to stop goals. Vasilevsky's still their goaltender.
Mm-hmm.
I have to take Tampa.
Yeah, I don't think I gave a pick, but I have Tampa and Calgary, and I will go with Tampa. Like we've said, they're about like the LA Dodgers of hockey. Just top to bottom, great players, and they don't have the payroll that the Dodgers do, or the funds that the Dodgers do. So very much a hard cap in hockey, but they're good at what they do, man. They're just a lot of depth, a lot of star power, and a lot of playoff experience. Just the perfect trio there.
Yeah, well, and how impressive would it be to see a three-peat? I think it would be the first three-peat maybe since the Canadians in the 70s. Yeah, I actually have the list pulled up here. So
Chicago won 3, but they weren't in a row.
think it was
The
3 out.
Devils won what, 2 or 3 with what's his name, the famous goaltender, Marty something. I'm blanking on his name.
Brodeur.
Yes, Brodeur. But I think those weren't consecutive. You might be right.
So just looking at 3.
Maybe the
pieces.
Red Wings. I think the Red Wings won 3 out of 4, maybe. But
The Red Wings won back-to-back, 97, 98,
okay,
which was the last back-to-back before the Penguins repeated.
right.
And then the Penguins repeated again in the 90s. So we're just looking at repeat winners now. Edmonton 2 in a row, 87, 88. Edmonton 2 in a row, 84, 85. So the Edmonton wins 4 out of 5 with the Canadians in there in the middle. So the Islanders, actually, what we were talking about. Yep, the Islanders. So the Islanders won 4 in a row, 80, 81, 82, and 83. So we're dating back to 83.
Well, I think we're in the middle of a Tampa dynasty. I mean, it is what it is.
And the other side of this too is how much more impressive would it be in the salary cap era? I know we always say that it's much harder to do in these areas, but it is. I mean, these guys float around and they go other places and talent leaves and gets more money. To win 3 titles in a row in any sport with a salary cap, that's unreal. It's unheard of. But I think come June, I think that's what we're going to see again.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar. I can't say I follow it that closely. I'm not familiar with Tampa, like what they have for the future. So what I mean by that is I don't know if this is the last run, last dance, so to speak. But from what I can tell, I mean, they don't seem to be slowing down. I know they signed Braden Point to like a 7 or 8 year contract extension. Stamkos and I think Kucherov is still around.
Mm-hmm.
Are still playing at a very high level. They have Victor Hedman on the blue line. I mean, I just don't see this team slowing down.
No. Well, look, here's the thing. Next year, if you invite me back on this, I'm going to actively pick another team that's not the Lightning. Like they might be the best team, but I will pick another team because I will not pick them in a row after 3. This is my limit.
This is your limit. Yeah, we'll see. But we clearly both like the Lightning, and we both tried to go into this picking somebody else. Just the way, as I say for the draft, it's the way the board fell.
Yeah. Well, but look at it too. We talked about it from the East. We looked at it from the idea of who could actually win a cup from the East. I think there are 3 teams that can win it. I think that what we said, I think Carolina, I think Florida, I think Tampa Bay. Who do you think can realistically win a cup from the West this year?
Probably just 2 teams. I think Colorado and maybe Calgary. Now, how many teams can get there? Maybe a little bit longer of a list. But I don't think St. Louis is going to win the cup. I don't think Dallas or LA, maybe Edmonton. But I kind of have to see it.
I think there's more questions than answers in the West.
Yes.
Where the East has more, you've actually seen teams do it. The East
well, how many in the last 5 or 6 years, how many Stanley Cup champs have come from the East? I would say the majority. I think St. Louis might be the only one since 2015.
Penguins, Capitals,
Blues, Lightning.
Yeah. So, and then I think the Blackhawks were before that. So, I mean, then you go back to the
Blackhawks were in 15, and then the Kings, and then I think Blackhawks or the Blackhawks, as I like to call them.
It's easily,
Do you watch Modern Family?
I did not religiously, but I probably need to get back into it because it's been so long.
I watched that for all the way through for the very first time last year when it hit Hulu, the entire series. And there's an episode of that where it's set in LA and 2 of the characters on the show are gay and they have all their, gay friends over. And one of them says, I have tickets to the Kings Blackhawks game. And one of the other guys, played by Nathan Hale, who is gay in real life, says, "You can call a team that?" And he has to say it, Black Hawks. And he's like, oh.
Whew. Just sweating that one out for a minute, trying to figure that one out. But no, I need to get back into that. Not notably the TV watcher, but
Yeah,
because
you
I'm too busy
you're not really
watching
much of a-
sports, eating
yeah,
frozen
you're not
pizza.
really much of a TV watcher. I don't know what show. I never really knew what shows you were watching.
I was watching the Penguins eating frozen pizza. That's that's all you have to know. Because
That
look,
was such
if
a
I'm crazy
funny.
enough to watch baseball on a nightly basis, that tells you about all you need to know about me watching TV shows.
That was such a funny. I think it was right before what's his name? Doc's class.
Well,
What's
I
his
mean,
name? Who am I thinking of? I can see his face.
I just needed
Doc
something to look. I just needed something
Jones.
to look forward to.
Jones.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if I'm walking into that class, I just need something to look forward to. So call it what it is.
And I just like no one wanted to be there, and we might have been talking hockey. I don't remember. And you just saying. All I know is the Penguins play tonight, and I got a frozen pizza. I'm excited.
I could say that 82 times a year.
I also remember in that class you would watch The Office on your laptop.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember one class we were all kind of hunched over. You know, you were a little bit over here, and we could all watch The Office. You had the subtitles on, and we were all watching. And then every now and then,
you know what's funny?
A moment.
What's funny about that is in my undergrad, I was actually pretty like student friendly. Yeah. Like I was like, oh, I don't want to watch it in class. Like I'm in class, like, I might like check the score or something, but like, I was not like, I got to grad school and I was like, you know what? I understand this. It's 7:00. I don't want to be here. The Penguins are on. I'm just going to throw the game on my TV. There's no reason for me to be here.
I didn't do that very much. I mean, there weren't very many night classes. There were a few. But most of them, were like on a Wednesday night. And in the fall, there's no Wednesday night football. Right. So we didn't really have that. There was a class on Monday night, but it was usually wrapped up by the time Monday night football rolled around.
Well, Phil Kasky knew to move it along. I mean, that was one of the best parts about his class was you want to be here. Like, this is fun, but like, you also want to watch Monday night football. I'm like, know your audience, dude. And he did.
Then we got to my second year and I took the compliance class, which you were gone at that point. And the class changed. I forget who it originally was, but it was a new teacher. And he was new to it. It was Blizzard, was his name. He worked with the compliance office. And he
didn't have Brad. That's sad.
Oh, yeah, it was a new teacher. And he would have the class on Monday. And he was about like Kasky. He knew his audience. He didn't keep us that long. But every now and then West Virginia basketball would play. So I'd throw on my iPad and have the game on. One week I remember being there and we were playing Kansas. I was like, well, I'm obviously going to watch the Kansas game. I'm not paying attention to class. And it happened 2, maybe 3 times during the semester. And every time I would take a picture of it and put it on Snapchat or something and say, we're not here to play school.
Yeah. well, I mean, yeah. But at the same time, like, what are you going to do? You're going to walk around and you're going to look at me and be like, don't watch the game.
No, and even I think Blizzard was even like, at one point he was like, all right, let's go a few more minutes. We have a game to watch.
Yeah, naturally, right. Like at the end of the day, we're still sports fans.
Yeah.
And if
we're in a sports class.
If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about sport management and how that, operates as like a thing that we're like, okay, so we're going to get out of here because there's a game on. Like that's a good metaphor for the world. Like we just need to leave because there's a game on. Don't ask me to do things on Sundays during the fall.
So my last semester, Shannon warned me, who was part of our class and one of my closest friends in the class, warned me about taking the sponsorship class. I forget who the professor was. I remember his name. He was kind of a douche.
Was it Todd Nisley?
Yes, him. I didn't dislike him like I dislike Doc, but he was kind of a prick. But
yeah, so I mean, he was fine. I actually remember I told the story one time we were talking about sponsorships in his class, and he was like really getting in on like how good the Nashville Predators were during their cup run with sponsorships and stuff, which I mean they were really good at it. But I something just fell behind me. I don't know what it was. I like scoffed at the notion, and I was wearing a Penguins hat, and he's like, oh, what Penguins fan doesn't want to do? And I told him the story about Luke Bryan. I'm like, they're trotting somebody out there who doesn't even know what a hockey puck is.
But it's Nashville, it's Music City. You gotta put, we're country music.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And people loved that. They're like, oh, Luke Bryan's watching. Well, I'm gonna watch. It's that recognition. And he's right. They did a great job at it, but it's just annoying because like I want to know. It's like Pittsburgh. For me, Pittsburgh, like Joe Manganiello, is that how you say his
Yeah.
last name? Like he is die hard. Like when he says
I
something
didn't know
about
he
the
was from
Steelers,
Pittsburgh until recently.
oh yeah, like he is Steelers all the way. He is done. So like when I think of celebrity fan, I think of the people that are actually living and breathing it. You know what I mean?
But anyway, so I took the sponsorship class, and Nisley was a professor, and I didn't care for the class. He was always a big like, no, don't be on your phone guy. And I'd look over and he would be on his phone. I'm like, really, dude? So anyway, just kind of a prick. But anyway, so that was the semester that COVID hit. Well, he also, right kind of before that, maybe after, he took another job and like left immediately.
Yes.
So we had a whole new different professor, and they gave us Lotsky.
Interesting.
So COVID hit, and Lotsky basically took the class over, and he said, I'll tell y'all what, since we're doing everything remotely, just write a paper about a really good sponsorship opportunity during COVID. And I was like, that's it? He goes, yeah, that's it. And you'll pass the class or whatever. And I did, and I took it semi-seriously. I did like a strongest man competition. Because I'd seen, being a Green Bay fan, I saw videos of Kenny Clark training during COVID, and he was pulling, some sort of automobile with like, chains or whatever. Right. I was like, oh, I could do that. So do like an Ironman competition, have everyone, separated 6 feet during COVID, blah, blah, blah. Air it on ESPN, whatever. So that's what I did. Got an A. But it was Lotsky's class, so I didn't take it that seriously.
One time, Dr. Lotsky, I forgot to do an online assignment for his class, and it was like 2 weeks late. And he comes into class, his other class that he taught? Not internship.
Leadership, was that it?
Yeah, whatever. I don't remember the name of it, but I was like 2 weeks late on an assignment, and genuinely, it was my fault. It wasn't, it wasn't me trying to get by. Like genuinely, just forgot, didn't slip. I was doing other things, working on other things, and he's like, just so you know, there's a couple of you that still haven't done the online assignment. I was like I knew it was me. And I went up to him and asked, I was like, do you want us to he's like, it's fine. It's fine. He's like, just do it. It's fine. I'll give you full points. I'm like, this
Lotsky.
That's what I expected, but I just didn't. I thought there might still be some repercussions. Nope.
So what's funny, we keep bringing up people no one else other than SPOMAG people are going to know, but I can remember going into our last year. So I was one of the 2-year programs the year we overlapped. And it wasn't just me, it was me, Shannon, Jerem, and I remember Brooke Foster was one. Mm-hmm. And she, knowing Lotsky, she saved that leadership class for her very last semester. Mm-hmm. Lotsky quit teaching the class. Do you want to take a guess who took the class over?
I'm just okay. Well, I mean, there's 2 right answers to this, but I'm not sure which one it would be. It either would have to be Dr. Bravo or Dr. Lee.
Neither.
Oh.
Doc Jones.
Oh.
I remember telling us that we were all like, oh.
Oh, Brooke. Man.
I was like, that's talk about a tough draw.
That's got to be the worst feeling when you're looking at it and you just think,
I'll save this for last because Lotsky's a cakewalk, and then he switches it up, drops teaching it, and then it goes to
Post out, man. Just one, easier class that you can take. No, yeah.
So I'm glad you brought up know your audience. I like Dr. Bravo. He was a really good guy. He was one who did not know his audience.
His classes were very long.
I remember one time, it was early in the class. Early, like that was the very first class I remember taking for SPOMAG. And I remember walking in there and, went like way too long for like a first part of the semester, introductory class. This is supposed to be syllabus week, used to be. Let's go over everything we're going to do. Let's introduce ourselves. He wanted to pick a partner for the final project. Okay, that's fine. Then let's go on our way out. And he started teaching. I was like, come on, man. No one's going to do it.
Right.
So he ended up letting us out. And then I remember either the next week or the week after, we got let out semi-early again. And he was like, this is probably the earliest I'm going to let y'all out. And I said, at 2 hours and 15 minutes or however long, I was like, this is
That's
a
the worst thing you can ever hear in a college class.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing you can ever hear, because then you just know it's downhill. This applies to
and he had 2 hours and 50 minutes and he used up just about 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Every time. I mean, you start to be like a clock watcher in classes like that. I mean, you really appreciate the people that don't use the 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Oh, there were so many times I was falling asleep during that class.
Yeah. Dr. Bravo uses the 2 hours and 50 minutes. I mean, it is planned out.
But I just thought those stories were funny. We got on the subject of sport management, and I thought those were worth telling. Because you were out of the game last year.
For all you that don't know WVU sport management, it was a fantastic time. A lot of great people over 2 years. And I apologize that you don't know who any of these people are.
No, but I'm sure there will be people like probably maybe Jerem might give this a listen. He's probably really the only one.
Anybody that's made it this far from sport management, you're still listening. Shout out to you.
Jerem,
to your portion.
I tried to get you on the podcast to do a live stream for the first round of the draft, and you couldn't do it. And I almost got Jerem. He backed out at the last minute, or not at the last minute, but he told me it was probably going to be tough for him to get on. But I know that he somewhat listens to the podcast, and I went to him and I said, hey, any chance you would want to come on to do a live stream of the draft? And if you don't know about Jerem, he is married with 3 kids, and he's not much older than us. How old are you, Ryan? I forget.
How old am I? 28.
You're 28? I thought you were older than that.
Yeah, well, I mean.
It's the bald head. I'm sorry, but it's the bald head.
Yeah, bald head, going home, watching hockey, eating frozen pizza. We keep coming back to that, but it's more the personality than it is anything. It's just that old man.
I thought you were older than me. I'm 29.
Yeah, 28. It'll be 29 the year of our Lord 2022.
Wow, I'll be 30 this year. But anyway, Jerem, I honestly don't know how old Jerem is. He told me at one point, like 29, I think, when I first met him. Then it felt like he aged 3 years in a year and a half. And he said, I'm 32 or something.
Yeah, well, he's just using COVID years. I mean, he's just estimating ahead. I mean,
but he has 3 kids, and they're like, it's not like young kids. Like I don't know how old his girl is. I know his son was born his first year in the program, and he has since had another kid. So young, right. And 5 years old.
And his daughter was like 3.
Yeah, 2 or 3 when he joined the program.
Okay, yeah, so young.
Yeah, very, very young. But I tried to get him on, and he thought it would be like if he could get on, it wouldn't be a problem with the wife, which I like Jennifer, and I have a good relationship with her, so that wouldn't be a problem. But
yeah, well, 3 kids, it's a responsibility. I have a girlfriend and a 10-pound dog, so it's not really much of a.
Did you just say a gopher?
10-pound dog.
Oh, I thought you said you have a.
I mean, gopher, dog, 10-pound dog, same thing. I mean, he kind of looks like a gopher. Now that you mentioned, like I could see that.
What kind of dog?
We don't know.
You don't know.
His vet papers say Pomeranian, but he's definitely not a Pomeranian. He's a Jack. He's got to be something Jack Russell to give you the image of. If I didn't think he would screw the whole thing up, I would call him up here, but hyper.
Yeah, Jack Russells are hyper.
Yeah, he is and he will lick the shit out of my face for
my dad. My dad just got a husky.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think he realizes what he signed up for.
I love husky. Honestly, if you were like, just based on how they look, like what's the best? Huskies are beautiful.
Yes. I've been in that camp.
Man, are they they're a lot.
The more research I do, I'm like, I don't think I could handle this. Like they need walks, they need they're just very, very busy dogs and active, and they shed.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think this is gonna work.
At our last apartment, my girlfriend Hannah and I, our last apartment, we lived at Chateau. I know you know where that is.
Yes, Chateau Royale.
For anyone else who doesn't listen to this, it's college apartments.
Right next to the football stadium.
we were on the second floor and we had a husky above us.
Mm-hmm.
They would brush him out and they would throw it over their balcony and it just landed on ours. And I'm like, we have a whole dog on our porch. I do not want this. This is terrible. And like, he was vocal, like good dog. Like he was beautiful. He's pretty. He was nice, but like he would just whine and complain whenever they weren't there. And then he sheds and runs around. It's, I can see why. I can see why one would not want a husky.
So he got it. He drove all the way to North Carolina to get it. And he, honeymoon phase, he was like, oh, I love this dog, whatever. And then he didn't talk about the dog for a while. For a while, he was sending us some updates, what was going on, pictures. And then there was a week or two where he just didn't send anything. And so I finally asked, how's it going with the dog? And he said, I've strongly considered taking him back. And I said, why? And he said, because he's potty training and that's obviously an issue with the dog. And he was like, I'm strongly considering taking him back. And my brother has just got a dog with his girlfriend, who, by the way, I have a story to tell with that, but later. But they got a golden retriever. And my dog has complained that same deal, potty training. And he said, it's getting better. They say the 16 weeks is kind of the cutoff point. If they can't figure it after that, it's trouble. And he said, she's starting to figure it out at like 15. And then I said, well, how old is my dad's dog? And he said, oh, he was born in February. I was like, Dad, it's April. He's not even at 10 weeks yet.
Yeah.
And then he said at that point, like, he was starting to figure it out a little bit. I was like, those are smart dogs. You can't take that dog back. He'll figure it out.
No. I mean, I've never had to train a dog. Thankfully, he came to us. He just turned 5 and we got him last year. I could go into that, but like, thankfully I've not have to do that. But like, you just have to be patient. Like that's
like I said, I don't think he realized what he signed up for.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is when big dogs are puppies, they're just oafs. I mean, they're just goofy. Like if it's a husky or if it's a golden retriever, they're just goofy when they're that young. They don't understand their bodies. They pee everywhere. It's who they are. It's like
my brother, my mom went to go visit him and their dog, and the dog was very sweet or whatever, and then started biting my mom's hair when she came to the door, which they only had her maybe a month at that point. And my brother was like, she's a gremlin. And my mom was like, she's a puppy.
Yeah, right. I find myself, honestly, that's like the canned answer for whenever a young dog does something. It's just a puppy. I mean, that you just say that and you justify them, like tearing your leg off because you're like, oh, they just think it's a bone. Like it's fine, but that's,
I can remember our family dog being a hellion, and we got her pretty late. She was born in March, and I think the breeder wanted to keep her 6 weeks or something. So that would have been April. Well, we were going on a family trip to like Hawaii in May. And my parents were like, let's wait till after so that we don't have this dog a month and then we're gone, right, somewhere far away for a week. And so we got her kind of late, and she was still, a little bit of a hellion. Still kicking though at 14 years old with my mom. So
beautiful.
But anyway, so the story I want to tell, my brother, my mom, and his girlfriend, my brother's girlfriend, went to Morgantown for the Iowa State game for football. And we flew into Pittsburgh, and the story goes is when you land, you've been to the Pittsburgh International Airport, I assume. They have T-shirts that say Yinzer on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my brother's girlfriend, being from Alabama in the deep South, has never been this far north. So she asks, what's the Yinzer? And my brother laughed and said, ask Shane when you see him. So she did. And, I'm not as much of a Pittsburgh guy as you, but I've been around Pittsburgh a lot. Morgantown is basically a faction of Pittsburgh. And so she asked me, she's like, what's the Yinzer? And I was like, oh boy, we got to have this conversation.
It's easier to show than it is to tell, to be honest.
I said, well, Yins is their version of y'all. If you're really, and it's only within like the city of Pittsburgh, really. I have not once heard someone say Yins, but it's their thing. They say Yins. It's their version of y'all. It's kind of like Ewins, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
And they pride themselves on it, and they call themselves Yinzers. Am I wrong?
No, 100%. And it's funny because I don't spend a ton of time in Pittsburgh. I mean, games, concerts, and
Right.
stuff. But the first time I was really truly introduced to that dialect was I was helping a close friend of mine. We worked together, and her boyfriend, which I also knew we worked together as well, had already moved. So I was helping her move. And she's like, my dad's going to come down, and her dad's from Pittsburgh. And I'd never met him before ever. But I mean, he was full on Pittsburgh. Let me tell you.
Pittsburgh itself is already a melting pot of just about any ethnicity you can imagine. It's the same with the accents. And you can find that if you listen to Pat McAfee's show, because there are times where I'm like, he sounds like he's from Boston. And then there are times, oh, he sounds like he's from Baltimore.
Yep. He literally, the first time I met this man, walks out of the truck.
And then there's a little bit of like New York in there.
Yeah. He like comes out. He's like, we're going to have to go out and get that out there and take it downtown. I'm like,
downtown.
I was like, I mean, I've lived for this moment my entire life, to just hang out with somebody who has the thickest Pittsburgh accent ever.
Pittsburgh geese.
And it's just funny. Now I find myself doing it occasionally. Like, I'll just get lazy and be like, we're going to go outside. And like, wait a minute, there's no H in out. Like, that's not right.
I've heard you mentioned him earlier, Joey Manganiello, whatever his name is, talk in a Pittsburgh accent, like on talk shows. And he gave a sentence, and it was, yeah, we're going to go downtown to watch the Steelers, and then we're going to go visit family in Washington County.
Yeah. I mean, my grandma, actually, who never probably went to Pittsburgh more than 5 times in her life, used to say Warsh. I'm like, where does
my grandparents did that. My grandmother said that she was from Southern West Virginia. Warsh.
Like Pittsburgh can have it. I mean, Pittsburgh's accent. I mean, when you have to make shirts to explain your dialect to people, like that's fine. Which actually brings me to another point, which is very funny. My girlfriend Hannah showed me a TikTok of I don't remember what it was, some firm or whatever, tech whatever in Pittsburgh, and they're showing all the men of the firm and doing something and like their problems or whatever, and like it was Pittsburgh, and like 3 of them had like Steelers or Penguin shirts on or something, and somebody commented and said, my favorite personality trait of men from Pittsburgh is that they're afraid that someone will not know they're from Pittsburgh. And I'm like, you know what? I get that.
I will say this. I don't think there's you see it in Boston and New York, sports related. I don't think there is a city as small, Pittsburgh's not small, but as small of a market as Pittsburgh that cares so much about their pro teams.
Yeah. I mean, they are genuine. And the thing is that the team that most people would be like, nobody cares about the Pirates. That's a lie.
Yeah, that's a lie. Yeah.
People care about the Pirates.
They just stink and they don't want to go.
They just don't care to go because they want them to be better. I always point back to the wild card game they played in 2013 against the Reds. And people are like, they don't care. I'm like, look at that stadium. They do care.
Well, wasn't that their first playoff appearance in 20 some years? There were people who had not seen the Pirates in the playoffs as long as they'd been alive.
I thought it was me. I genuinely thought it was me.
You're a year younger than me. So yeah, that checks out because that was 2013. So you were around 20, 21 years old.
Those crazy sports superstitions that you think you have, like that was mine. I was like, I'm the reason the Pirates aren't in the playoffs. I don't know what it is, but like I was born and the Pirates were just like, we're done. But I mean, I think you're right. And I think, I think West Virginia fans suffer from, ours is a little bit different as WVU fans, but like we all suffer from that like extremely prideful mentality of like, we will be offended if you don't know that we're a Steelers fan or a WVU fan.
Oh, I mean, for sure. I was driving around. I live in Southeast Texas, Beaumont, about an hour east of Houston. And I was actually driving around. I went to lunch with a coworker and she was driving and I saw a truck drive by. At the very bottom was the Flying WV. I was like, get out of town. So they're down here somewhere. I don't know where, but they're here.
You'll find them.
As Tony Creedy says, there's always a West Virginia connection.
There is, always.
So do we have anything else to discuss? We've talked college football. We've talked the NFL draft. We've talked hockey. We've talked Pittsburgh geese. We've talked about sport management. Sorry.
I think we're about to talk that.
Talk that. Yeah. All right, man. I appreciate you coming on. I know I was worried because you, I don't mean to insult. You're a guy that takes 2 to 3 business days sometimes to respond to text messages.
I am terrible about it. Honestly, I need to make it my now resolution, not my New Year's resolution to text, because I'm one of those people that I see it and I'm like, I'll get back to that. And then I do something else and I'm like, damn it, I have to get and then I do something else and it just keeps getting lost. So it's not insulting. I am self-aware. I am terrible with it unless it is right in front of my face.
Well, as always, it's good to talk to a fellow person from the Morgantown area. I can't tell you the last time I had someone on from who well, James, I guess counts, but like I said, he's different. He doesn't live in Morgantown anymore. He lives in Baltimore. So you're one of the few. There were a few. I remember when I went to the Iowa State game, I was hanging out in the concourse of I still call it Mountaineer Field. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, it's what it is.
And I was looking at I noticed press people walking by, and I saw Tanner Kane, who was in our sport management class. And I didn't even tell my family. I ran over, tapped him on the shoulder, and he was like, "What's up, man?"
Yep.
So, you always know somebody if you're from Morgantown, just about.
Oh yeah, in walking through the blue lot, you're right. You'll always see
the blue lot. That is
matter.
Such a fun time.
Oh yeah, that's the best. That's the best part of WVU games. Even if the team's terrible, the blue lot still is pumping.
Hey, win or lose, we still booze, man.
Morgantown.
We tried to get my brother's girlfriend prepared. We were like,
you can't.
Well, we didn't hype it up too much. But my brother really wanted to show her Morgantown. You know, I've obviously been going my whole life, and we were just saying, like, be prepared. You know, Morgantown is easy to get lost in the sauce. So I was giving her a little bit of a hard time.
The ultimate joke of people being like, Morgantown, you ain't ready. If there's one city in this nation that's always ready.
Oh, Morgantown will go to bat all the time.
Morgantown is it. It is buried in central West Virginia, the one city that is always ready. Do not discredit that ever.
If you challenge Morgantown thinking that they won't show up, they will.
No, Morgantown was already there. Like, we challenged Morgantown, and Morgantown was like, "We've been here, but we are ready to go."
They're about like the person at a party who just should not be drinking and just keeps doing it. You have to cut them off.
Yep, absolutely.
Well,
good old Morgantown.
I love. I would. That's the goal. You know, if I can move back anywhere, it's back home, Morgantown. But just hard, man. There's not much there, and unless you're working for WVU, there's not a lot of options.
And come to Mon Health.
I could come to Mon Health.
I love it.
If you pay me more, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was one of my factors. I was like, hey, I can do this.
I could maybe is your job at WVU still hiring?
No.
Worth a shot.
No, they hired somebody. Yeah. I had to think of it.
I'll let you go. I've had you on long enough. We've talked just about everything. Always fun to have you on though.
All good. Call me anytime, and I promise I'll get back better than I have been in the past.
You know, next year, I really think you would be a good guest for the draft, you know, as a co-host. Because I don't think James will ever do it. He always has something else to do. Like, and he'll tell me, yeah, I'll do it. And then the week of, no, I'm going to go do something else. Yeah,
I would love to do it. Look, the draft is probably the one thing that I pay attention to more than anything every year. So that's the goal. One of these times I'm coming. One of these times it's going to happen.
I didn't get to do it this year, and I'm really disappointed because were you a big It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fan?
You know, that's one of those shows that I started and didn't finish, but wanted to finish, need to finish. So I know it, but like
there are a few episodes where the character Mac, anytime he gets dressed up, he wears a polo, and a tie. And that's the way I was dressing for the draft. Is just a dry fit polo and a tie. And I was excited. And then I couldn't get, you know, the guy who was supposed to be my co-host, who's also from Morgantown. was at WBU on the podcast. He had to work and he told me it would be a long shot, but I got prepared anyway. Didn't get to do it, but I'm going to look to do it next year.
Yeah, we got to do it one because the draft is. My buddy and I that watch it together, we're like, it's national holiday. It's right there, in my opinion, behind the Super Bowl. Like I like all the games, but like that, just the energy, the fun,
Yes.
football's back. It's right up there.
Yeah, we're mid 7th round now. So, Green Bay is actually on the clock. So I'm going to go ahead and take off.
There you go. It's perfect timing.
Perfect timing. All right, my man. Once again, I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me. Take it easy.
Later.
See you, buddy.
Yeah.